Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my regular podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for years with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings, and also was a competitor on the Survivor Series. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. It's Monday, December 7th, a day that will live in infamy.
That's right.
And which is a very important date in American history. But, what we're talking about today is something a little less important, yet hockey fans are concerned about it. I keep believing that this is going to get done, this being just an agreement between the players and owners to start this 2021 or 2020-21 season, or just 2021 season, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
But we're not getting anywhere thus far. Should we be alarmed, or should we just trust that this is just the process?
I think it's just the process. We were just chatting there. I saw an interview by Gary Bettman where he was saying he's really not renegotiating the agreement that they made way back at the start of the pandemic, which extended or amended actually, I should say it did extend the CBA and made the cap flat, controlled that. So, but I think what he's saying is that, listen, we've already agreed going way back to where the last lockout that they have for the past 10 years now, that it is a 50-50 split on the revenues. And it's just a matter of how we get there now. I don't know if that's exactly how the players are looking at it, but like my feeling is that there's just no question the Players Association knew that this was going to happen, that if the pandemic continued and there was not going to be anybody in the stands, that the losses were going to be so big for the owners that they just couldn't continue on that initial agreement that they made. They're going to have to amend it. And I believe the Players Association, rightfully so, has to take the stance of, well, we're outraged that you're coming back to us again. But to me, there's no question they knew that was going to happen. And I think, I think they realize, okay, it is a 50-50 split. How do we get there? And that's the really issue. So I think it's going to get done. And actually, I think they must have been watching our show last time too, because you predicted that we'd start playing on January 15th, and that's what the latest word is. So,
yeah, I mean, we'll see kind of what happens. I agree with you that I think the players anticipated all this, but that doesn't mean they still can't be upset about it. My grandson is 2 years old. And, he's got this thing now. If the television is on, he thinks, he's in charge of what should be on. And, I heard his mother saying to him, it's all right to be upset. That just happens. But, it's how you act upon it that, dictates whether you're going to be in trouble or not. And I think that's the situation here. Like, yeah, we can say that the players expected this, but that doesn't change the fact that, they can be a little irritated by this, and I think that's totally acceptable.
But why would you see? I'm going to disagree with you there. Like, I don't think it's acceptable. We're in the middle of a pandemic, which is spiking again. Obviously, the revenues are affected, and again, although I know they had that initial agreement way back to the start of the pandemic, but they obviously know that the revenues aren't going to be the same. How can they assume then that? Okay, well, yes. Why would they say, well, that's not fair to us? It shouldn't be going on. I'm thinking to myself, none of this is fair to anybody. We have to make adjustments to get it done. It doesn't mean that the Player Association just have to give in, but I just don't know why they'd be upset.
Well, I just think the psychology of it. Sometimes you have to do things, you got to do them, but you're still unhappy about them. Sometimes no matter whether it's right or wrong, it's hard to legislate someone's attitude about it. They may know they got to do it, but that doesn't mean, they have to like it. And, there is this thing about a contract, usually when you sign a contract, if it goes south, the other side doesn't get to say, well, I didn't know this was going to happen. I didn't know you were going to be a poor player, after the second year of the contract. So, and I think that's the only issue. That doesn't mean, and I also think it's part of the strategy, which I think you fully embrace.
Yes.
So, if they want to act irritated for a little while longer with the hope of getting a better deal, I think they have the right to do that. But I haven't lost my optimism that this, will get done, because I think ultimately both sides want to play. I mean, we've heard discussions at some owners, but I think it's still a minority group, because if it wasn't, it would be a much bigger deal. Right. That feels, look, if we don't play, we're going to lose less money. There's two sides to that. I always say to people, the reason they ended up with a lot of money is just because they make good decisions with their money. If they don't throw it away. On the other hand, I've always felt that when you assume ownership, you buy a professional sports franchise, it's inherent within that purchase that it's a public trust, and that you have to do things what's best, for the fan base, even sometimes if it's not your own best interest. If you don't want to do that, even though it's not written anywhere, if you don't want to do that, then don't buy a sports franchise, because how much people care about those. So,
right. And it's good business too, right? I mean, you want to keep your fans happy. So
sure.
You look at the situation in Ottawa, that's been mishandled with the ownership there, some of the stuff that he's done, and that's affected the bottom line. So you're totally right. I mean, it's I don't think you're saying it's just because of the bottom line, but the bottom line is part of it too. So yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. The bottom line is an important part of it. I mean, nobody buys before I said this, maybe some people do buy franchises knowing they're going to lose money, but hope that they'll get it back at the end when they sell the franchises. Maybe they just want to own a franchise, because you've heard that. People say, well, it's just a bad deal. Like I remember Bruce McMahon once told me that the worst form of ownership is, when you're a minority owner, you own a piece of the ownership. And he goes, only thing that guarantee is a good seat at the game, because you can't make any decisions, and usually there's cash calls, and you're just kind of pouring money in. So it's never kind of a perfect situation. But saying all that, I mean, I still expect they will all come together at some point. And but my question for you today, and I didn't prep you for this, but I think we can just kind of talk about it off the top of our head, is we haven't talked about this, but it's pretty clear we're going to play 48 or 52 or 56 games, something of that. That changes the season dramatically. Mm-hmm. We go from a marathon to a sprint.
Yes.
And I always remember one of my favorite quotes of all time was Frank Shorter, who was the Olympic gold medal winner, I believe, for USA at an Olympic Games. If he wasn't a gold medal winner, he was, the number one marathon runner.
I remember.
Frank Shorter. And his famous quote about it, he goes, anybody can run 20 miles. It's the last 6 that make you a marathoner. Right. And I always have compared that to an NHL regular season. Mm-hmm. Like anybody can be good for 10 games or 15 games or 20 games. I mean, we saw the Buffalo Sabres 2 years in a row get off to these lengthy winning streaks, and then they collapse because the season is not 10 or 12 games; it's 82. Well, now all of a sudden, we're not in 82 game season; it's only 48. And you know what? If you got hot for an extended period, it's going to have an amazing impact. A 10-game winning streak in a 48-game season is worth a lot more than a 10-game winning streak in an 82-game season. Yeah. So
remember last time we had a lockout, was it 10 years ago, and they had a 48-game schedule coming back with, and that was fantastic hockey, right? Because every game meant so much more. So I agree with you totally. And here's the thing to me that's about when you see teams go on these hot streaks, right, where they win 12 or they win 9 of 10 or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they lose for 3 or 4 games. And to me, it's human nature, because to win, I think in all sports, but particularly in the NHL, it's really that attention to detail, right? It's a sacrifice. It's saying, instead of me taking the easy way here, I'm going to make the right play, but it's going to be harder. I'm going to have to take a hit to get this play done. And you do that when you're winning. But then after a while, when you've won for a while, you say, okay, well, now we're really doing well. We can afford to take some shortcuts here. We can afford to do things maybe not the right way. And then you start to lose again. And now you've gotten into some bad habits, and 1 loss becomes 2 losses and 3. And then now the coach or the players or both get together and say, okay, we got to get back to playing our game again. We got to get back to doing the right thing. And you're right. So 48 games as opposed to 82, you can say to yourself, we can sacrifice like that, play that hard game for a shorter period of time, for a shorter season. That's why you see the games get cranked up more in the playoffs. It's not that the players aren't trying hard in the regular season, but again, that extra, that sacrifice and taking hits sometimes, and the injuries you have to play through, it's much easier. Now you're in the playoffs in that shorter period of time. It's much easier to do that. So Listen, if they go to 48 games, I mean, to be honest with you, I'd love to see a 48 game schedule just regularly. It's not going to happen because of the finances of it, but I mean, the 48 games pretty much guarantees you every game is going to mean that much more. So I think that's great hockey.
Well, I'm going to get your thoughts on who that benefits, but before we do that, I would just like to add is that I think also it's as simple as getting in a groove as well.
Yeah.
And anything you do in life, whether you're out working on your lawn or doing your Christmas cards, when you first get started, it's kind of helter skelter. If you're writing a Christmas card, you don't know how much to write, and then all of a sudden, after you do 3 or 4 of them, suddenly you're in a groove, and then they start to get done. When you're doing lawn work, it's the same way. Well, it's the same in sports. Like if you start, as you said, attention to detail, you start doing the right things, it becomes habit. You get in that groove, and you go out every couple of days. You feel good about yourself. You're confident. And then you get out there, and it's easier to do that for 48 games than 82 is to get into that groove for an extended period. And I believe, there's a lot of coaches that don't believe in momentum, but I believe in momentum just in terms of, the confidence and the mixture or the aura that just you feel good about yourself coming to the rink. Like that's why I think in playoffs too, you see teams that just get in the groove. They just every other day, they're playing hockey, they're playing big games, they're coming out, and everybody feels good about it. And it's a lot of good habits are being formed.
Yeah. And it's amazing with the professional athlete. About myself, I'll talk. There's sometimes when your confidence is there, man, it's unbelievable the things you think you can do. If you're trying to make a pinpoint pass, put it through sticks, whatever, you think you can do anything right out there on the ice. And the opposite is true too. There's sometimes when you lose your confidence, it's like you can't do anything right. You're the puck's blowing up in your stick, and that just happens. And I don't even know. I guess you can get your confidence back by staying out after practice and doing extra things. And, it's kind of like you give yourself a license to be confident because you've done that work. But it's hard when you lose your confidence. Like, why all of a sudden you lose your confidence? You're a professional athlete. You're doing the same thing all the time, but it comes and goes pretty quickly too.
Well, in confidence, you can see it in players who, you see it in baseball. I remember the great late now, he just passed away in the last year, Al Kaline of the Detroit Tigers talking about, and someone who was talking to him about not wanting the ball hit to him when the game was on the line. And Al, who was a Hall of Fame defensive player as well as a Hall of Fame hitter, said, "That's funny. I always wanted the ball hit to me." He said, "Because I had a lot of faith in my own ability to get done." Well, we see that in hockey as well. You see guys that, boy, they want that puck when the game's on the line. You see other guys that, they'd rather have someone else in the spotlight. They want to contribute in terms of a team, but, they don't want all the pressure on them.
Well, and for me, I wanted to be out there. Like if it was the last minute of a game and we're up by a goal or killing a penalty or whatever, I wanted to be on the ice. Like that was my thing, right? So when I was feeling good about my game, put me out there, right? That's my spot. And you'd almost and this was good. You'd almost get mad if you weren't put out there. Like that's my job, I want that. Well,
I remember I mentioned this just recently. I think it was on this podcast about, one of my all-time favorite hockey moments was watching Peter Forsberg in the Lillehammer Olympic Games when he was just a teenager, and they were in the shootout. And everybody detests the shootout as a way to describe or as a way to end an important game. But boy, I tell you, in the gold medal game with Norway and Canada, I don't know that I've ever sensed more tension, and it was more exciting than that happened. Well, what's long been forgotten about this is that the veteran Swedish players, some of them, this shootout went for an extended period, declined the opportunity to take a second shot at the shootout. And they came to Peter again, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm going. 18 years old, never been in it. Just give me the puck." And not only did he do that, but he did it with a move that was just, unbelievable.
Didn't they have a stamp with that move?
They made a stamp of them. And then, of course, once we got shootouts in the NHL, people, tried to do those moves too. And, the Forsberg move is what it was known as.
Remember TJ Oshie too? Was it what Olympics?
That was 2018 or 2014 in in Russia for sure.
Yeah.
It was exciting. That story ended up. I might have had stories that were read by more, but I in the old days we never paid attention or knew like how many people. But in this days of websites and stuff, we know. And within a couple hours, I had over 400,000 people.
Oh, really?
That's how big the Olympics are. And people watched it. They wanted to sort of read what people had to say about it and all that. So people just wanted to read about that event. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about teams that benefit from the sprint rather than the marathon, because I think they're sort of all in the same area that benefit. And I know one team that I think benefits that's close to your heart.
You think the Rangers?
I do. I think.
Why do you say that?
Well, because they've got younger players. Younger players don't know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. If they play well coming out of the gate and they get on a roll, they won't hit that wall. Young players hit the wall.
And most of their young guys had some experience last year too, right? So players like Fox and those guys now they're now they know the league. That first year jittery kind of stuff that happens to you is out of the way. Now, I agree. I think the Rangers could do well. I think another team too, like Columbus Blue Jackets.
That's the other one. Yep. Yeah. My two as well.
Because they have to play hard to win, and they are that attention to detail kind of team, right? Tortorella demands that. Their coach demands that of them. And for 48 games, it's obviously a lot easier to play closer to that 100% game for 48 games than it is 82. But I would not have said the Rangers, but now that you say that, yeah. And goaltending too, man. To me, their goaltending is fantastic. So yeah.
Yeah, the thing about their goaltending though, and I'm a big believer in it, but if their goaltending, if Shesterkin doesn't win Rookie of the Year, they're going to have a bad season. Because we are expecting him to, carry the load, and he's replacing a legend. A lot of pressure on him.
Yes, there is pressure on him. But I'll tell you, he seemed to be able to not just handle it, but he wanted the pressure. It didn't seem to bother him at all, the game he played. And you're right. Yes, they have to get good goaltending, but they got a lot of other pieces too. I just think their forward group, the defensemen.
Well, you're absolutely right. That doesn't change the fact that if they don't get the goaltending, they're not going to win.
Yeah, but I don't think it all has to be that he has to steal games. I mean, he just has to.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that part of the equation for the Rangers is they have a lot of nice parts, but one of those parts is the goaltender.
Yes,
who doesn't have any history. So, we're expecting him to be strong. Yeah. Like this isn't. Well, we hope he's strong.
Right.
This is we have to have him be strong.
Yeah,
because the other option is inexperienced as he is. So
yes. And doesn't play with the same poise. Like that's the part of the thing with Shesterkin. It's like if I'm a defenseman and I'm watching him play on my team, it's like he never seems to be out of control. Like it's always okay, guys, we're fine. Even if he's making a big save, it doesn't look like a big save. That's one of the keys for me with great goaltending, is that it's like it's not just flopping all over, diving all over, make the save. Because then you feel like, oh God, I'm barely hanging on. This is terrible here the way we're playing. But I agree with you totally. He is a huge part of the team. There's no question. Yep.
Well, and even though we haven't seen him enough, I think what we have seen of him, I think it gives everybody a lot of confidence that he is that guy. I saw the Hockey News. I should have printed that out so we could discuss it. The Hockey News ranked the 31 goalies. I think the way they did it, and maybe this is the only way to do it, is, if you weren't all that experienced, they had you down the list because you don't have a track record. And, maybe that's the fair way to do it. But I saw some things up there that I was bothered by. First of all, I totally agreed with the top of their list where they had.
Who they have there? Vasilevsky, Price?
Yeah, Vasilevsky was number 1. Carey Price was number 2. I'm going to call it up a little bit if we can do that.
I think I'd have a number 3 there. I'd be interested to see who they got. So it's pretty clear to me those top 2 guys are up there.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
While you're looking, the really important stuff is how did your wonderful wife Terry? What did she think of my menu yesterday? I don't think
we talked about it, Tom, the menu yesterday, but I'll ask you about it because the one thing I've noticed is, and I think it's because of what you do with your vegetables, all of your meals are the same color. Like I noticed your fried rice looks just like when you do your pasta.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Well, and part of it is too. I make that vegetable broth that's just got carrots in it, so it comes with that orange color all the time. Yeah,
that orange color.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'll have to change it up.
It all looks the same. When you're looking at it in a photo. Okay, Connor Hellebuyck is 3. I'm not going to disagree with that. He was Vezina. Yeah. He was really good. Tuukka Rask is right up there 4. John Gibson 5. I like. Now here's one. Ben Bishop. Coming off a good year, but boy, just seemed high to me.
Yeah, very high.
Yeah. Then Carter Hart.
Carter Hart's up there, right?
Yeah, Carter. Yeah, it's a little high. I would agree with that. Yeah. And then this is the one that I really like because I think it shows they're on top of it. Darcy Kemper. Darcy Kemper is a really, really good goalie. Yeah. And just because he's playing out in Arizona, we don't pay attention. Then here's one. I just don't think we know enough about it to put him there, and that's Robin Leonard at 9.
No. Yeah.
And then they get Jordan Binnington at 10. And Binnington now, we're looking at him going, well, is he the goalie we saw in the playoffs or was he the goalie we saw last year? And then Jacob Markstrom, which, I like that. I think he's a top 10 goalie right in the cusp there. Yep. Varlamov, which is kind of funny considering that a lot of people think he's going to lose his job. Grubauer at 13. Elvis has not left the building in Columbus. He's at 14.
Wow, that's kind of high for him. I like him, but
I do too. 15, Freddie Anderson. I like Freddie Anderson. I know a lot of fans don't. I would push him up a couple, not too high. Now, this surprised me a little bit. Matt Murray. Now, Matt Murray, I think this is all based on, I understand basically why they have him there. I mean, he's won cups. Right. But he didn't play well last year. And because of that, he lost his job in Pittsburgh to a guy who was less heralded and hadn't won a cup.
Matt Murray's that kind of guy that I'm going, okay, well, when he's on his game, he's great, but I just don't know what I'm going to get from him, right? That's the problem.
Yeah. Now what's interesting to me is that, boy, how far they've fallen. At 17, which means he's below average goaltender in this league, Sergei Bobrovsky. And boy, a couple of years ago, you would have thought he's a top 5 for a long period of time.
Yeah, I guess, but based on what you've got right now, and that's last season, he was not very good. Yeah.
No. Now, this is what I was saying. They've got Shesterkin at 20, behind Cam Talbot and Thomas Greiss. Now, there's no way I would not take.
Who did this? Does Mike Milbury do this or what?
No, it's the Hockey News. So, I mean, I think one of the issues that you have to at least acknowledge is there has to be some criteria. Yeah. And I'm sure one of the things that they looked at was experience. Because, they've got Samsonov, 21, and I like him better than some of the goalies ahead of that list. Mackenzie Blackwood, who I like, 22, but, he's young. We haven't seen him a lot. Yeah. Koskinen with Edmonton, probably a little high at 23, maybe. Thatcher Demko. We all love Thatcher Demko, but, they got him at 24 just because, there's his body of work. Peter Mrazek. Now, this is kind of really brings home what everybody says about Carolina. Like, boy, if they had a goalie. I think he's served them well, but he's not an elite goalie. So
no, I agree with you. Yeah.
And then you're on the record as saying that you wouldn't be shocked that the Penguins take a step backward, and they've got Tristan Jarry at 26, Jarry actually I think it is, and Jonathan Quick 27th with the Kings.
Really?
Saros with Nashville at 28th. Martin Jones, who's really, really, really plummeted in terms of his reputation, 29. Linus Allmark in Buffalo, and then Colin Delia with the Blackhawks.
So Henrik Lundqvist has fallen right off that list altogether.
Well, he has, but because he really doesn't officially have a starting spot.
So it's just the starting goaltenders then. Wow.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, the projected starters anyway. Like I have written and I did a column not long ago when I listed 10 things that don't be surprised about. And one of them is Lundqvist ends up starting goalie in Washington.
Yeah, I agree totally. Yeah, especially in a short season like that too. A young kid comes in there if he's not ready to go right away. They can't afford to wait. Right, they've got to play him. Yeah.
Yeah. But what struck me about that list too is it feels like every team has quality goaltending. When you think about it, these are in theory the 31 best goalies in the world. But then I look at that list and I'm going, do they have quality goalies?
Well, you mentioned it there. You look at a Martin Jones. I mean, man, that's my goaltender. Man, I'm not too confident in that. If I'm right.
Yeah, but they picked up from Minnesota.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
I'm drawing a complete blank here.
Yeah.
Early in the morning, but so
there's a team right there that's in the San Jose Sharks. Like, what is going to happen with San Jose? Like, are they going to be what they were last year? Because you look at that lineup, and if they get off to another bad start, they're going to tank again, or they could get off to a good start with that lineup, and they could really be a force up there too. But let's see.
Yeah, they could. The goaltending really hurt them last year.
Right.
So if they got any level of consistency out of their goaltending, who knows in a 48-game season? I think you could say that. There are some poor teams. Ottawa's still poor.
Los Angeles is really tough.
Yeah. But I'd say, and I think we're going to expand the playoffs again.
Yeah. Oh, you think so? Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. If I'm players, I say, let's do it.
I thought Bettman was pretty solid. I guess if this short season like that, I thought Bettman was pretty solid on saying that was a one-time thing. It wasn't going to happen again.
Well, I've heard a little undercurrent that they would like to see that for the short, since this season is so screwed up again too.
Here's the thing that I want to see what happens is if some of these teams fall out of a playoff hunt and they're up against the cap, are they willing to give up some pretty good players that are still fairly young to teams like, Los Angeles that's got cap space? Because again, we're at that flat cap, and who knows, like down the road, it's going to be flat again. So, if teams think, if they think they're not going to make it and they're up against the cap and they can't do anything, do they trade players? I see that's going to be interesting to me. This is a unique time, right? This shortened season. The flat cap, all the the finances and everything. I get a feeling there's going to be some moves that we don't anticipate that are going to happen, that are going to take place just purely because teams have to for financial reasons.
Well, I think that's true. I think Pierre LeBrun has, who is pretty wired in, has reported that the projection is that we're going to have the busiest trade deadline in NHL history. Beforehand, I reported last week from talking to GMs around the league that the Lightning have told teams they're not willing to give up their top prospects. Now, if they're saying that, what that tells me is they've got a deal they know they could make where they don't have to do that. They may not like it. They're still trying to negotiate. But then subsequent to that, I reported that, and we talked about this before, that it would now be Pulock or Killorn. And then Elliot Friedman also reported he thought it would be more Killorn than Palat. I'd heard it was kind of even, or they would do both.
Right.
And then Eric Tahacek came out with it was hard to read whether that was speculation or an actual trade rumor, where he was talking about a first round pick and a prospect going to Detroit, and they would take Killorn and Johnson. I find that hard to believe.
They would take Killorn and Johnson?
They would take Killorn and Johnson because that's 4 years for Johnson. And Yzerman just extracted himself from those lengthy contracts. They bought out Abdicator.
But maybe he believes in Johnson that much, right? And he knows him as much as anybody, right?
But Johnson's 30 years old. Yzerman's on record saying that they're 3 years away. So by the time they're ready to go, he's going to be 33. And it's a 4-year deal, $5 million. And the psychology between, I've talked about this before. I find it absolutely amazing when you talk to to general managers that when they talk about a $5 million player, they exhale and go, boy, that's taking it. But 4.25 or 4.3, that suddenly that's not so bad. And but I don't know. That would surprise me. It would surprise me if the Red Wings were willing to make that deal to take on. Now, both of those are viable players. They're not taking on dead weight. Like Johnson had 29 goals 2 seasons ago, and Killorn, I think, had 26.
Yeah, and they're character guys too, right? I mean, there's something, and I'm with you. The age is tough, but there's something to be said for the fact you want to build a culture in your team too, right? That work ethic. I mean, that's where I think Edmonton really failed. They had all those first overall picks in the draft, but they never built a culture there. Now that's going.
Well, but then okay, so we take Johnson and Killorn. Does that mean that Veleno and Zadina don't play this season? They sit.
I don't know that much about their prospects, but I mean, I don't know. I just, to have a whole bunch of young guys constantly losing all the time and not knowing how to win.
But he's addressed that this year because he's got this new defense that it's not great, but it's credible. Like, they ought to be able to keep the puck out of the net now.
Who they had? They had Stahl and who else?
Stetcher coming out of Vancouver, who they've added John Merrill, who's coming as a veteran. I think he's the 7.
I still don't think Merrill's not a huge improvement. I mean, he's.
Right. Oh, he's the number 7.
But I mean, I just don't look.
You got a guy who's played 400 games as their number 7.
I just think, though. I mean, having those 2 character guys that they've won the cup. See, I would do that. I don't know all his prospects coming up and how it would affect them, but I would rather the history with the Red Wings too is, and that was more Kenny Holland in the past, but they keep those kids in the minors to play a little bit more and then bring them up, right? And so maybe he's got some guys there that he thinks, I don't think this guy's fully ready, so I'm going to play him in the minors more if there is minor league hockey, and then we've got those character guys to kind of build that locker room up, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we disagree on that. I mean, I like the players, but I think Zadina played last year,
right?
And, I think he's ready.
Did you hear that as like the pretty good certainty that it was going to happen?
No, he just said it was a possibility, and I don't know. It just seemed it's really the years on the contract. Like if it were 2-year deal, I'd completely agree with you.
Right.
4 years and 3 years. Where you just, Yzerman talked about how good it was to be able to, not have the length of your contracts and to be able to bring up some of the younger players. And, so I don't know, I would be surprised, but, he knows those players and he knows them well, and he knows they can play. So there's that argument too, but, that's interesting. Well, we've gone way over here as
we had to cover my meal I made on Sunday too, right? We had to discuss that. So
and I'll make sure my wife takes a look at it, and I'll see if she agrees with me that your meals, because of your veggies, always have the same color.
Could you please express her too that I'm a little bit disappointed she hasn't already seen it? I mean, I get kind of hanging on the fact that she would approve it.
Well, I don't know. Are you friends on Facebook? You should friend my wife.
Okay, I'll make sure I do that.
You should do that because she follows cooking shows and all that kind of stuff. I liked the pulled pork. I thought looked outstanding.
Oh God! What I've learned with my pulled pork was I didn't realize you got to kind of overcook it, get it up to 200 degrees internally. I was undercooking it and wasn't falling off the bone like I wanted to, but so we got it down now.
Yeah, and you really shouldn't undercook pork, as we all know. So,
right. How about the presentation though? Putting the beans into a separate little dish there, so it didn't run.
Yeah, for sure. Now, how do you make your baked beans? Because those aren't the healthiest. Baked beans, at least the way I know them, aren't the healthiest.
Well, that's one of the few things I just opened up the can on. There's a lot of fiber. It's B&M baked beans, so it's not homemade, but it's a lot of good fiber in there though too. A lot of good.
So, do you do the traditional baked beans with the kind of hickory, sugary taste?
Yeah, you know what? I don't. I just get the original B&M baked beans. My mother, though, she used to make baked beans. She would get the beans and soak them for days so that they're soft.
Yeah, so did my relatives.
So I maybe have to do that if I'm saying.
Well, but if you do that, though, the only problem with all those, because I'm sure your mother made them the same way my aunt did, which was brown sugar, ketchup, which is full of sugar, mustard, Worcestershire sauce, and bacon usually.
But, I know. Yes, you put strips of bacon on top of it. It's bacon,
right?
With the bacon on top. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So that's what your bacon is not something you probably eat. No.
I was going to make coleslaw, but then there's a lot of mayonnaise in there too. But I was trying to come up with a less, like maybe just a little bit of mayonnaise in there, and have a tasty coleslaw. But
there is some. There's sometimes when you go to a nicer restaurant, it's kind of a vinegary. Coleslaw. That's actually quite good. So
it is too. Not as much mayonnaise in there. Yeah.
All right, my friend, we've really gone too far here with our cooking show, but we'll be back on Wednesday with another cooking show for you. What are we making for Wednesday, Tom?
Well, let's figure something out. We'll come up with something. We'll have a discussion about different things. Yes.
You know what? I read your comments. I always do, and it felt to me that someone wanted to basically invited someone. He wanted to send you a photo of someone to your thing.
That's right. I forgot. There's a guy up at Northern Michigan University. His name was Goofus, and he was this one-man band. He had this instrument that had all different kinds of things in it. He was a legend up there at Marquette, so we'll have him up there.
All right, sounds good. And I'm gonna need to see a Christmas tree pretty soon.
No, we go with Dancing Santa. I got to get Dancing Santa out. That's my decorations for Christmas.
That's it, eh? No tree?
Well, my boys are grown now and everything, so it's not many decorations. But Dancing Santa's been around for a long time. It's probably about 25 years, so I got to get him out of the closet and get him up.
All right. Well, Dancing Santa's in the closet. Well, there you go. All right. See ya.
See you Wednesday.